"That silk is too fine for you," said Miss Vawdrey, loudly enough for the whole of the mercer's shop to hear. "Put it down before you mark it. Really, Hebditch, must your girls handle the good stuff with their thumbs all over it?" The Duke of Bramwell had come into Hebditch's for 4 yards of black grosgrain, and had been standing at the far counter for 11 minutes, unrecognized, in a plain coat, with rain on his boots. And he set the grosgrain down and turned around. The girl at the middle counter had a bolt of silvered gray silk across her forearm. She did not put it down. She did not blush, either, which interested him. "It is not too fine for me, Miss Vawdrey," she said. "It is too fine for the shop. It ought never to have come to Hebditch's at all, and if you look at the selvage you will see it was cut off a court order in London and sold on cheap, which is why we have 11 bolts of it and no market. Nobody in this town will pay 9 shillings a yard." She laid it down then, and turned the fold back with 2 fingers, and the light came through it like water. Which is a great pity, because in candlelight it does that. There was a small silence in Hebditch's. Even Miss Vawdrey, who was not a woman easily silenced, looked at the silk. "How much of it is there?" the Duke asked. Every head in the shop turned. Mr. Hebditch, who had been in the back, came out at a speed remarkable in a man of 16 stone. Your Grace, forgive me, I had no notion, Susanna, the Duke of Bramwell, curtsy, girl." 11 bolts, your Grace," said the girl, curtsying properly and coming up steady. 240 yards or thereabouts. 4 of them have a fault in the weave about the middle, which I can cut around." "And what would you do with 240 yards of it?" She hesitated. It was the first hesitation he had seen in her, and it was not fear. It was the caution of somebody who has been laughed at before for answering that kind of question honestly. 11 gowns and a great deal of trimming," she said. "Not made as they are making them now, with the fullness at the back. That silk has no body, it wants to hang. It wants a narrow skirt and no ornament at all, and the whole of the effect in the fall of it, and 1 row of jet at the hem to weight it down so that it moves after you when you turn." She stopped. "That is what I would do with it. Mr. Hebditch would sell it to a dealer at 3 shillings. "I will take all 11 bolts," the Duke said. Mr. Hebditch made a sound like a kettle. "Have them wrapped and have them sent," said Bramwell, drawing out his pocketbook, "to Miss Lark, your Grace, Susanna Lark." "To Miss Susanna Lark, at whatever address she gives you this afternoon at 9 shillings the yard, and I will have your bill by Friday." He looked up. "Miss Lark, you will make me 11 gowns in the manner you have just described, and you will be paid a maker's price for each, and your name shall be on the bill. Do you accept?" Susanna Lark stood behind the counter with her hands flat on the silvered silk, and for one moment he thought she was going to weep, and then she did something a great deal better. "No, your Grace," she said. Miss Vawdrey laughed out loud. "Not on those terms," Susanna went on over her. "You have bought that silk in front of 11 customers to shame a lady who was unkind to me, and I am obliged to you, but by 6 o'clock this town will be saying that the Duke of Bramwell bought a shop girl 200 yards of court silk, and my name is all the capital I have got in the world." Her voice was perfectly clear. "I will make the gowns. But I will buy the silk from you at 3 shillings, which is what a dealer would have paid, and I will pay you out of the first 4 gowns I sell, and the bill will be in my name and not yours. Then it is a trade, sir, and not a rescue." The Duke of Bramwell had been addressed by a prime minister, 2 bishops and his own formidable grandmother, and had never once been made to feel so thoroughly outmaneuvered across a counter of grosgrain. 3 shillings, he said. "And the 11 gowns at a maker's price, half on delivery. I shall want a workroom. Mr. Hebditch's back room has no window, and I cannot judge a color in it." "Susanna," said Mr. Hebditch. "There are rooms above the old chandler's in Cross Street," said the Duke, "which belong to me, and which are empty, and which have 4 windows facing north. My agent will call on you tomorrow with the lease. You will pay me rent, Miss Lark, since you are so particular about being obliged, and I shall expect it quarterly, in full, like any other tenant." For the first time she smiled, and it went through the plain, competent little face like the light through the silk. "Thank you, Your Grace," she said. "You will have it." He walked back to his rooms at the Crescent in the rain, and could not for the life of him remember whether he had bought the black grosgrain. He had come to the town for 6 weeks, for the waters, on the advice of a physician who had told him that a man of 39 who slept 4 hours a night, and had buried both parents and a brother in 5 years, would shortly be buried himself. Bramwell Hall was let. His agents wrote to him weekly. He had expected to be bored to the edge of madness, and to be looked at, and to be pursued by every mother in the assembly rooms with a daughter and an ambition. He had not expected to spend the following month finding excuses to walk down Cross Street. She had the workroom scrubbed and whitewashed within a week. She engaged 2 girls, then 4, then a woman of 50 who had been thrown out of a London house for going blind in one eye, and who could still set a sleeve better than anyone in the county. He knew all this because he asked, and because his own valet's sister was one of the 4. He went once, openly in the 3rd week, to be measured for nothing at all. He brought his late mother's court train, which had been in a chest for 11 years, and asked whether anything could be done with it. She turned it over on the long table under the north windows, for a long time in silence. "Whose was it?" "My mother's." "You have been carrying it about the country in a chest for 11 years. She said it without looking up. "It could be cut down and made over. It would be a very fine thing, and it would not be your mother's train any more. Or it could be brushed and lined and put back in the chest properly, with camphor, which is what I would do, Your Grace, and then in 30 years somebody will open the chest and it will still be hers." Bramwell stood in a whitewashed room that smelled of camphor and new linen, and understood, with the particular clarity that comes at a bad moment, that he had stopped being bored some weeks ago, and was now in considerable danger. "Put it back in the chest," he said. The 11 gowns were finished by the 1st week of October, and 9 of them had been bespoken before the last was off the table. That was the thing the town could not forgive. It was one matter for a duke to be foolish about a shop girl. It was quite another for Mrs. Farrow's daughter, and the 2 Miss Aylmers, and Lady Chettle's niece, all to be seen in grey silk with a single row of jet at the hem, moving in a way that no other gown in that town moved, and all of them from the same north-facing workroom over the old chandler's. By Michaelmas there was a waiting list of 5 weeks. By the Assembly Ball there was one of 9. Miss Vawdrey ordered one under her mother's name. Bramwell learned this from Susanna herself, on a Tuesday, in the workroom, with 3 girls hemming at the far end and the door standing open, because she was scrupulous about the door standing open. "You might have refused her," he said. I thought about it for a whole evening." She snipped a thread. "Then I thought, she said that silk was too fine for me in front of 11 people, and if I refuse her, that is a small revenge that lasts a fortnight. But if I make her the best gown she will ever own, and she has to stand up in it at the assembly and hear the room ask her who made it, then she has to say my name, Your Grace, out loud, for the rest of her life every time." Susanna looked up with the pins in her mouth and the mildest expression imaginable. "I find I prefer that." "Miss Lark," said the Duke of Bramwell with feeling, "you are a frightening woman." "I am a tradeswoman, sir. It is very similar." She would not make herself a gown for the Assembly Ball. He discovered this 3 days before it, and it was the only quarrel they ever had in that workroom. "You have dressed half the town." "I have dressed my customers. I am not a customer, and I am not a guest. I have no invitation, and I should not accept one." She was folding tissue and would not look at him. "Your Grace, be sensible. If I walk into the assembly rooms in gray silk on your arm, then every gown in that room becomes a joke, and every woman who ordered from me feels she has been made a fool of, and in 6 months I have no trade. They will forgive me for being clever. They will not forgive me for being their equal. And if I do not care what they forgive, you can afford not to care." She set the tissue down. "That is not a reproach. It is only the truth, and it is the whole distance between us, and it does not go away because you have been kind to me for 2 months." Bramwell went to the assembly ball alone and stood through 2 sets, and looked at 9 gowns of silvered gray moving under the chandeliers, and heard 3 separate women say the name Lark, and Miss Vawdrey say it twice, through her teeth. It ought to have satisfied him. It did not satisfy him at all. He left before supper, and walked up Cross Street in his ball dress with the rain starting, and stood in the road looking up at 4 north windows, with a light still burning behind them at 11 at night. He was still standing there when the door opened. "You will ruin those shoes," Susanna said. "Come out here." "It is raining, Your Grace." "Then come out here and be rained on, and I shall say what I came to say in the middle of a public street, where anybody may look out of a window and see it, so that no one can ever say it was done in a corner." She came out. She had a shawl over her working dress and ink on her fingers from the order book, and the lamplight from her own doorway fell on her, and the rain came down between them, and Cassian Bramwell found that a speech he had built carefully over 4 hours had gone entirely out of his head. "You told me the distance between us does not go away," he said. "You are right, it does not. So I shall not pretend it away, and I shall not offer you a rescue, because you have refused 2 already, and I have learned my lesson." He took off his hat, because his mother had taught him that a man asks bareheaded, "Marry me, not to save you. You do not require saving. You require more window space and a second cutting table, and I know it, because your order book is 9 weeks long, and you have 4 girls in a room built for 2. Susanna Lark stood in the rain and said nothing. "Keep the business," he said, "in your own name, with your name on the bill, as it has been since the day you refused me across a counter. I will not have it swallowed. If you marry me, it goes into the settlement as yours, and the profits are yours, and if in 20 years there are 40 women earning a living in a Bramwell workroom, that will be your doing, and not mine, and everyone will know it." His voice was not quite steady. "I have been let a house I do not live in and prescribed waters I do not drink, and the only hour of the day I have wanted for 2 months is the hour I spend in a whitewashed room that smells of camphor, being told I am wrong about silk. That is the whole of it, Miss Lark. There is nothing noble in it. I am not being generous. I am asking." The rain ran off the doorframe. Somewhere down the street, the assembly rooms were still playing. "They will say you married a shop girl," she said. "They will say it for 2 years, and then they will say it was very fashionable of me, and then they will say nothing at all, because their daughters will be wearing your gowns and their granddaughters will be wearing them." He held out his hand, palm up, and waited. "I asked you a question, madam." "Yes," said Susanna Lark. "Yes, of course. Yes, put your hat on, you foolish man. You will take a chill, and then where shall I be?" They were married in the November, quietly, in the town where they had met, and the bride wore silvered gray silk with 1 row of jet at the hem, cut narrow, with no ornament whatever, and every woman in the church knew precisely who had made it. Miss Vawdrey was not invited. She told everyone she had been. The workroom over the old chandler's became 2 workrooms, and then a house in Cross Street with 11 north windows, and the name over the door said Lark, in plain letters, and it said it for 51 years. The half-blind woman who set sleeves was still there at 70, on full wages, and trained 9 girls out of the parish poorhouse to a trade they kept. And on the wall of the Duchess of Bramwell's private sitting room, framed under glass where a family portrait ought to have hung, there was a small square of silvered gray silk, cut from the selvage of the first of 11 bolts, the silk that had been too fine for her. Her husband had it framed himself and hung it himself, and when anybody asked, he said, "That is the most expensive thing I ever bought, and the cheapest thing I ever paid for. She made me buy it back off her at 3 shillings.